maybe you could just talk a little bit how you and Robbie Müller thought about shooting each of the different locations, if there was any difference or if there was an attempt at continuity, and especially for me, the interscape of the mind, it's so striking and so, it's so now. I mean, I feel like I could have walked into Chelsea Gallery and see this imagery, but 25 years ago.
That was, at the time, the very, very first digital image ever to appear in the context of a film, because the technology was still in an experimental phase. There was only one studio in Tokyo, and that's why I thanked him at the end credits, at NHK, where they had the first high-definition digital editing suite, except they had never produced anything. The machines were just brand new, and all the technicians that were able to run it were very scared that we were going to use it, but at the same time very excited, and all 10 of them were always standing behind us, taking notes what we were doing. And what we were doing was basically feeding the wealth of imagery we had collected for the film sequences and seeing what this new digital technology that was so unknown to everybody could do. And we basically destroyed the imagery that we have and tried to ruin it in any possible way. And we were the very first people on the planet who saw what fast forward in digital means, because even the engineers saw it for the first time. And then if you recorded it fast forward and slowed it down again, we saw each and every one of these pixels for the first time. So it was still quite clumsy, and it took always an eternity to render. And instead of 1 week, we spent 6 weeks in that editing suite, and my little editor and we were the only folks there. We basically slept and lived in that editing suite. He ended up marrying the interpreter. And they're happy ever after. And we never saw the light of day, and at the end of 6 weeks, we came out with all the imagery that is film-related and all the stuff you see on the computers. And even the computers in the film at the time were the HD monitors, and that wasn't really on the market yet. So this was sort of real on the edge. And I was so happy that we could do this, because I was so much afraid that in the end we couldn't do other dream sequences than all through the history of cinema, where dreams were always basically shot with the same means as the film itself. And I so much wanted to have a different language for dreams, and it just so happened that that was the very first moment that one could do this. And we pretty much got everything we could out of the machines, and the engineers wrote down everything we did. Basically, we destroyed everything. At least our imagery, not the machines. And they weren't so sure if that was useful for future users of HD technology, but they were very proud of the fact that at the end we had all this stuff. And one of the most exciting stuff was the reproduction of the second seeing, what's called the second seeing of the film, what the computer then translates into the brain of the blind person, and especially the footage that we called our Vermeer footage, when Sam's sister is talking to the camera, and Robbie and I tried to invent some sort of imaginary Vermeer image, and that, when it was destroyed digitally, that was more and more beautiful. And that was our highlight in the digital editing suite. Good night and someday in Tokyo.
Incredible stuff. Yeah, let's go on this side on the aisle there.
The scene that was shot when Claire is interviewing Sam's sister looked like a Vermeer painting. You made a tablecloth, the window, the back, and sort of asking.
We tried hard. When Robbie and I were thinking about, we knew that in the course of the film, this recording that actually Claire does, because Sam is incapable of doing it, we knew that this was going to be extremely important later on in the story, and that what they recorded there was going to be the first successful transportation of images into the visual cortex of a blind person. So Robbie and I sat there in the nights before we shot this and said, what is our most beautiful vision of a person in front of a camera? And we both came up with the same answer: it would have to look like Vermeer. And then we tried very hard to find a room in San Francisco that had this sort of windows on the left side, this sort of, how do you call it, like church windows, or like in most of Vermeer paintings, that he has the windows on the left side, and they're all this old-fashioned glass windows. So we finally found this church in Oakland, and we got to shoot in this church, and the art department tried their very best to invent sort of a mixture of all sorts of Vermeer paintings of a single woman. And of course it doesn't exist as such, but it's a strange mixture. And Robbie only lit it through a window, like really trying to follow the lighting of all Vermeer paintings, which strictly comes from one source outside the window. That was my favorite day of shooting in the entire film, because the crews, as film crews go, are always sort of raunchy and loud, and you have to really record silence if you want to shoot. And in that room, they always only whisper, and it was strictly that. But maybe because we wanted to change.